On Life, Death, and Beyond, I'm honored to welcome Mitch Shirley. Mitch has served with the spirit world for nearly 3 decades, sharing a deep understanding that death is not an end, but a continuation. His journey into mediumship began in childhood through an early awareness of spirit and later fully unfolded as he developed his innate gifts in adulthood. Alongside his wife, Kathryn, Mitch is a certified advanced grief recovery specialist and blends mediumship with grief support work and helps others to develop their innate abilities through spiritual assessment, mediumship psychic readings, workshops, and grief cafes, creating compassionate spaces for healing, understanding, and connection for those navigating loss. You can find Mitch at thesoultrust.com and other social media platforms such as Facebook. Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of can bring us into like where mediumship is good for helping people, with healing, because
Yeah.
of those situations that come up, especially around now, this time of year, we've gone through the end of the year, the holidays, people losing people, needing healing, unresolved situations. So how are your clients as far as that goes? Do you do more of the healing, like grief work, or how do you help people with the medium?
Well, for me, my understanding is that all forms and aspects of mediumship are healing. And um, in the UK, we do suffer a little bit that there's like a us and them for some people between, well, people say, well, I'm only a healer. And I go, well, so am I. They go, no, well, you work as a medium. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still a healing medium. I said, it's just a different form of
Mhm.
mediumship. I said, the a healing medium is the fundamental basis of why of communication. Right. I said, we're there to open a door for people to search and find the reality out for themselves, and then to be able to self-heal as well. But at different times, we all need that connection, that conductor to just help us to tune in and to learn. I said, it's very rare that people just go click of the fingers. Oh, yeah, I understand all this. I've got it. Yeah, yeah, no problem. I said, we all have to learn and experience. So healing's incredibly, incredibly important. And with the aspects of grief and loss, it's fundamental. Um, now, for me, there's no hierarchy with regard to healing and helping people. Whatever way and in whatever way we can help somebody to be kind to somebody. Now, whether the healing that we can give comes in so many different ways. A lot of the work that I do within, I renovate properties but I'll also do little jobs. And in particular, it's generally for lots of elderly ladies who the husbands pass to the spirit world. And invariably, they need somebody to do the small jobs. So even though, yes, big chunks of work are great because you've only got to visit somebody once, I also look at the pastoral work, if you want, for better description, of healing. And, there's lots of people who need help and they have a small, they might find that something's gone wrong and they need this fixing. And yeah, I can come and do that. And it'd be a very, I don't charge ridiculous money. It's things, we often, me and Kath sort of have a go at each other going, yeah, you don't charge for that. You haven't charged for that. No, well, you didn't charge for that, did you? Well, yeah, okay. We're both as bad as one another. If we have enough money, we have enough money. That's fine. We can help out. We can help and we can be of service. And it's that aspect of healing as that aspect of being of service to people and being kind, but also being kind to yourself. there are times when you have to go, I've got to walk away from this because it's not helping me. And I need to heal from this experience. But then we also, when we look at our grief and loss, which is unfortunately, it's an extension of love, quite simply. If if you love somebody deeply, then invariably you will grieve for them deeply because that relationship and that connection is fundamental to who you are. And so you have a different process and an adjustment to make as they do in the spirit world. Because that physical presence isn't there within your life, but your physical presence isn't theirs within theirs in the spirit world either. And often lots of people focus on that, well, the loss here, but also it's within the loss and the grief within the spirit world. And because of the work that we've done and the training and education that we've done, we've also found within that communication from the spirit world that they can work within that with that grief and that loss and come and specifically focus on those particular things that need healing. And there are lots of things that a lot of the healing that's needed, I found, is that people need it because it the evil twins of fear and guilt um, are so embedded because, oh, I could have done this, I could have, would have, should have,
Hmm.
and that's a massive thing. So the healing in all forms, and one of the most important, and this is for anybody, one of the most important skills is the ability to listen with our soul, not with our ears. So even though you might be in a conversation with somebody, you just feel your soul tells you that that person's not in a good place or something's not right. So you ask them once, are you okay? Yeah, 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 I'm fine. Are you sure you're okay? Because I don't know, something just doesn't feel right. Yeah, 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 no, okay. Ask that third time because invariably that people will then go, well, it's not a big thing, but, and then they start, and when they start, then we stop. I know I've rattled on and everything else with all these different things, but when I work within the working with the grief recovery, it's about the listening. So the talking with someone, but also the listening to. And I know that native Indians, I don't particularly know which tribe or whatever that it's attributed to, but one of the things that is that if you sit and listen to someone, you will learn far more than what you have to say because you will understand that person far more. And part of the grief recovery method, one of the important factors is learning to listen to somebody when they are expressing um, a grief, a loss, a trauma that's happened to them, and you actually listen, and it's so empowering. And really, truly listening to somebody, you you gain so much more information on so many different levels. Not just what you're hearing, it's coming in, your brain's processing, but what you're feeling and the energy that comes, and you see there's nothing. I personally feel there's nothing more wonderful than when you see somebody's soul come alive because you've helped them to, you've helped them a little bit out of that darkness, that dark place for that time. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
they won't go back to it, but you can help. And once they've come out of it once, okay, I can do this. And that healing is incredible. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's almost like starting a new cycle or pattern. Like once you get help somebody out of a situation, it helps them to see that they can do it on their own, and it helps them to be able to develop that. Like you develop anything else, like we're talking about mediumship, developing
Mm.
that. We can develop bringing ourselves out of the space that we're in when we're in suffering. And it's just having the understanding and knowing, because a lot of people look at grief as negative. Well, why are you still
Mm.
grieving? It was
Mm.
10 years
Yeah,
ago. Why are you not
yeah.
over it? There's a lot of negative content, words on it, and thoughts and stuff like that. But I've heard that people don't really heal from it. It's just helping ourselves get out of that, because we're never going to heal it from what I hear. I've never really had a personal experience of
Okay.
grieving in this lifetime anyway. And I don't know whether it's because I've always kind of known that, we don't really, from my experience, that we don't really die. There is an afterlife. It's a temporary state of being. But I've also practiced Buddhism, so I have a lot of their understanding, and they talk a lot about grief and suffering. And when we have the right understanding, and we have um, support, different things like that, it can help us to navigate life. But it's also a different way. Grief is like our natural way that we are letting go. Like our bodies know how to automatically die, right? To
Mm. Yeah,
transition.
yeah.
So our bodies know how to automatically grieve, and it's not forgetting them, because they were a big part of our life, but it's our natural way of our bodies detaching from it. And so that's part of the grieving process. And I love that you said it's an extension of love, because a lot of people don't look at it at that, because a lot of us may not have had that depth of love.
Mm. Yeah, the difficult thing is as well, you see, but within the grieving process and grief, that so much of it is attributed to the loss of a person, or for some people to the loss of a pet or an animal companion, whether they may be people, some people, their affinity with horses, for example, is, it's so deep. But the thing is that in reality, there are over 40 different types of grief and loss,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And because we concentrate on this one aspect, and what we don't realize, and as you mentioned, that yes, it's interwoven, and this is how it affects mediumship. And this is one of the things that me and Kath in particular have been putting things together and working with certain people, and um, they rec most mediums have not done the grief work that they need to do. And what happens is, when I said about having that ceiling and that restriction, if you've had a significant loss that has greatly affected you, so many, and these are, and I mean, these are what I'll use the terminology. People say top mediums. These are people who you're excellent mediums. But I know for a fact that they won't go to certain places. They won't reference certain losses of certain individuals in certain ways because it may have been traumatic for them or for the family member that they've lost. So if they'd lost a particular relative in a car crash, they might reference a car crash and they might reference, say, the brother, but they can't because it's too emotionally hurtful and painful to actually. So they shy away from that. And then once you start to do that, then you start to restrict other aspects of your mediumship. But that also works on the same principle in our lives, that we restrict so much of ourselves because of the historical teachings that we've received, whether it be from a religious background. And that's not but for parents, family doctrine, or this is how you deal with grief, the way that we process it, the way that we deal with it. And often you will get people who we've worked with and say they've lost, say that the partner, the husband's lost, passed, and their children, they come and they say, well, I can't, my kids, they just won't open up. I go, okay, so what have you taught them? Well, I've said it's okay that I say, yeah, but what have you taught them? Because what I'll do is I'll use my mediumship to feel into the situation, but then I can work with the grief knowledge that and understanding and marry the two together and to help them then and go, well, I don't know. I said, okay, when it becomes overwhelming and the grief becomes just, I can't be around. How do you show that? Well, I'll go into my room and I'll cry in my room. I said, and what do your children do? They go and cry in the room. What have you showed them?
Mm.
Okay. I said, so if you can actually express to, I'm not saying that you're walking around crying and breaking down, though that's how might be how you feel. I said, but if you actually educate them that it's okay to show that it hurts. It's okay to show that you're in pain at this moment and you're sad at this moment. You can express that with me and I can express it with you. That will bring you closer together as a family. That will actually strengthen you and build such a strong structure of trust and love that the grief actually gives you something that you would not have had if you didn't experience it. So even in the darkest of days, there is something that can be built from it. As difficult as you, or as unfathomable as you may think it will be, there is always something if we look and feel and sense into it. That's what grief can give us. There is a positive. It actually releases within us that when we, and I also express to people, because one of the things we do is every month we do a grief cafe for people to come and discuss and talk about their grief. And which is free, by the way. I don't charge for that. Which is a couple of hours, and we just get everybody together and online. So, and it's wonderful when you can see that people they cry, and I say to them, "Don't apologize." There's one thing to anybody who's grieving or suffered grief and loss. I says, don't, no matter what other people say, do not apologize and say, I'm sorry for shedding a tear, because there is a healing quality in tears.
Mm-hmm.
It is medically known. There's a healing that comes with our grief. And what that does, and this is my understanding, the way I always put it, people, it's not about moving on. It's about moving forward. And if we can move forward, we take all that we have and all that we've been and all that we are with us and all those that have been connected to us. If we move on, it's like dropping somebody off at the bus stop and we walk away. That's where they're staying. No, they're still a part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
They still, and that's where the mediumship comes back in, because how can they be telling you about something that's been going on that nobody else knows anything about, but they are aware of, da 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 da, because they were there. They were still part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So they've not left you. They That grief is there to actually educate you and to enlighten you that your love still exists, because else it wouldn't hurt. Plain and simple, it wouldn't hurt if it didn't matter.
Right.
That person matters to you, or that animal, that pet, or the grief that we feel when we lose. Here's a prime example, and it's one that I've often used with people, and they go, "Oh, I hadn't thought of it like that." I said, if you have siblings and you're the eldest, or you're the middle one, and you have another, another sibling, there's three or there's four or whatever. But if you are an older sibling, I said, we have four. So our daughter experienced this when our son was born. She experienced a loss because she went from being the total focus of me and Kathryn to the shared focus, which then when the twins came along, that then happened to both of them, and Georgia had her difficulties. So there's losses that are in experienced there within her twin, because she wasn't able, she was physically okay, but she's grown up with loss and guilt because there's nothing. I'm okay. Georgia has all these difficulties. Why was it Georgia and not me? So that healing, and it's not about patting people on the head and going there. That's the worst thing. We're just shutting people down, and that's the worst thing that we do in this world, is we repress and stop people expressing their grief. And time is of no consequence whatsoever. All it does, people say, oh, the first year is the worst. Not really. Try living 10 years down the line, because you've had 10 times that's happened rather than the first time. First time is very, very, it will always be painful. And it's painful subsequently, but it's different. Each time it's different. So time on itself does nothing. But your grief needs to be expressed, because what happens, it comes out physically or emotionally. And that's why you get lots of things where, and in particular within men, we're okay and we're taught it's okay to express negative emotions, but not the positive ones. A tear is a positive emotion because it's a sign of love. It can be a sign of pain, but it's a sign of love.
Exactly.
And to express those feelings and those emotions, and that your feeling of that you felt that much for somebody, that they meant that much to you. Why shouldn't that be celebrated? Why do we have to? Big boys don't cry. I'm an ex-rugby player. I've been what we in the UK refer to a bloke, right? Which is, a straightforward, this is who I am. So for me, I can say to you, well, if you express this emotion, it's all right for you. What? As an ex-rugby player, ex-steel worker, what other environment do you want me to go into where I've been, where men are men, that I've worked in, that I can't be who I am? I've always been who I am. And it's understanding that you have to be who you are. And that in itself is a massive healing process that's attached to all the grief and loss that we experience in our day-to-day life, never mind the significant losses of people or pets. So,
It sounds like you're saying that grief changes over time. And it's not really about time itself, but every
mm,
time we experience it, it's something different. Now, is that because we don't necessarily deal with it when it happens and it's like drawn out, and then every time it comes up, it's like a healing in itself? Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
and I suppose if you look at the physical analogy, it's a bit like we cut our skin and a scab forms. And if we don't allow that scab to form, so there's the actual loss
Mm-hmm.
and the pain and the suffering and the injury and all these what ifs and guilt and fear and all those things are going to come to the surface. But if we catch it, and sometimes that's how grief comes. We might just catch it on something, splits it, and the scab comes off or just splits, and there's a little bit of blood that might come out. But sometimes we might start pecking at it, and people are like, yeah, well, I don't want to mess with my grief. I don't want to. Yeah, but is it starting to itch? There's an itch there, and there's something within you that you need to do something about. And but if you pack it off too soon, it starts to bleed again, and then another scab forms. And so over the course of time, as you keep packing, and then eventually we go, oh, I've got a scar there. Now that other loss I experienced, I got a scab, but I didn't mess with that. And strangely enough, that hasn't left a scar on me. But the scars of grief are the markings of, as I refer to it, the markings of love. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that it's got to be, everything has to be deep and has to cut all the way through. Sometimes it can just on the surface, but it can leave us a mark on us and can change who we are and how we behave. So it's important that we actually look at it and recognize that it has changed us as a person. Has it made us a better person? Has it made us negative? Has it made us more understanding? Or has it made us a nasty piece of work? Somebody we wouldn't want to be around, let alone others. And the way that our energy is that we give off has changed forever. And that's also part of our aura. That's there within us. That's within the writings of our history. It's there to be interpreted. But also, as within our own aura, we can change that history as in how it affects us and what we take from it. Do we want to just have the pain and the suffering? And this is why the work for me is so important, is helping people to come alive again, but also bring that person alive in their everyday life, to remember them in the positive rather than the fact that I've lost. Because you're true, so I've lost them. They're not going to be able to do this. I can't do this anymore. I used to do this with my dad. We used to have these situations. I remember this. I remember all these memories. Or, God, I'm so grateful that I had my dad, and I'm so grateful that he taught me how to ride my bike. And I'm so grateful for his sense of humor and how my dad used to protect me. And if anybody, did anything against my dad, and I'm so grateful for this. And I'm so lucky that I had this person in my life because so many others don't. And it's not saying you're ungrateful because you don't think that way. It's about how can I bring alive the positive for my benefit, but also to send to them love and happiness, to say, I love you so much and I miss you so much. I mean, I know for Kathryn, her dad's been past 9 years, just gone. And my dad's been past 2.5 years. But I know now, this time round, we actually went on holiday on the day that the anniversary of his passing. And I'm totally aware when that grief it's biting. And it doesn't mean just because it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years now. There aren't going to be days when it bites, but it might bite in a different way each time. Sometimes less, sometimes more. It just depends. But if we acknowledge that, and if we can, it's not always possible, but if we can, we acknowledge it and actually go, God, I love you. God, I'll miss you. Now, for me, that's healing because we're expressing what we feel. And if we don't want to express it in words, we can send it in thought, being a living thing. But yeah, since I did that work, it released and put into place so many of the different negative experiences that have been in my life. And I actually went, okay, yeah, I learned things. I learned things about me. I learned things about other people. And I also learned to still have kindness towards people and to actually feel sorry and go, okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way. But it's not necessarily my problem. And that's healing for you as a person living your life. You're not
Mhm.
responsible for everybody, you know? Once
Right.
I go through that front door, what I do is down to me. It's got nothing, it's not Kath's responsibility. And it was not my mum and dad's responsibility. And I did plenty of stupid things, particularly as a young man. Some
Yep, I think we
very,
all do.
yeah, some very, very stupid things that later I think, oh my God, that cost me a blinking fortune because I had to pay to get things fixed again. Um, just because I thought I was being smart. But that's it's natural healing and within the healing and grief, mediumship, all of that, intuition, it all folds into itself. And for me, that's why one of the things I want to work on more so is helping mediums as well as other people who are not particularly working on that direction to actually work on their grief and understand how that is affecting them. It doesn't mean that it's going to change your mediumship necessarily and, oh my God, it's going to turn everything upside down, but it's going to complement it and it's going to actually educate you and then you get a better understanding. And once you know something, you know it. You can't go back.
Mhm.
So it will change you for the positive because it will help you to understand yourself and to have trust in yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely important to whatever situation, is going on in our life is to bring it, work with it, and try to see the positive in it, even like we were saying with the grief. And I think that's very helpful, to be able to do that and then see it from that point of view. So, yeah. Do you think that like knowing that we have an afterlife and there's no ends, going back to the mediumship, that it helps people to be more at peace with our transitioning and the death that we experience?
Personally, I do, and again, it's down to every individual's experience because you will get people who believe this or they believe that. So, like different religions have different pathways. One of the things that I do particularly find difficult is when people say, "Oh, this is the only way. This is the only way. This is the only religion." I I have when you said something from the spirit world, and I knew it had come in. You asked me earlier about whether something that would come in, and that thought and that has just come back to me. It was before I started today, and I knew that there's a particular passage from a particular book that was written from through a trance circle, and this is. I think it's the late 40s, 1940s, maybe the early 1950s. Which is in the UK. And the trance communicator was asked a question about religion and the importance of religion and uh, is there a religion? And the trance communicator said, there are many that have been to the well that is God and been able to take but a cupful away and base a religion upon it. And for me, that's always summed up the reality of the eternal power, the great spirit, God, whatever terminology somebody wishes um, to use. And that references of that is that the reality is the full reality is just too much for us to learn. It's like if we walked into a major, I know you refer to them as colleges, we refer to them as university, into one of the libraries and then just stood there and we're like, oh my God, I've got to read all this. I've got to read it and then I've got to understand it. And then I've got to be able to cross-reference that to that and argue that to that. And your mind will be absolutely blown. So the full reality and the full majesty will never be revealed to us because it is, in my understanding, and this is what makes sense to me. People talk about the Big Bang theory and about the expansion of the universe now. That's the expansion of the reality of God, the Great Spirit, the reality of that connection, of that energy, that it's constantly expanding and expanding and expanding because it can,
Mm.
it will, it does. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. If you want to scratch around and argue the toss over this and argue that, as we say, they argue the toss over that and this, that, and that, fine. But can you actually back up your understanding, your belief with experience to identify this happened? And that's what I look for. What people, and I know on my own personal experiences, as well as other people who I incredible people and mediums who they've seen and experienced and been aware, and you can feel that when somebody speaks that there is that connection. You can feel that emotion that comes through it. I know for me, I don't go through life being all this expressive all of the time and being, it brings me alive. There's a passion, there's a my soul expands, and I think, wow, the wonder. And I always say to people, why? Question it,
Mm.
follow it, and then question it some more and see where it takes you. But always reference it back and go, well, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? What can I process to that? And that's that thing coming back to healing. Do you feel better? Yeah. Well, that's all that matters. Healing in whatever form has helped. And there are,
Mm.
say that million and one different forms of healing. So whatever works, and when you said earlier with regard to but sitting in the power or sitting with meditation, what helps you and you feel a benefit, that's your personal journey. It doesn't
Right.
mean you're not going to come back to something else and do things differently, but at that time. Um, and we've always got an hour's time tomorrow. We are infinite. So,
Yeah. Even if
yeah.
it's just 15 minutes a day,
Yeah.
sit and
Yeah.
meditate. I do. That's where my journey started actually, was meditating. And then I learned about my honing my psychic abilities, and then mediumship, then energy healing, and then trance medium. And it just kind of evolved that way. And so it's just following the path. But I want to kind of go back to the cup. I love that analogy that you shared. I think that speaks volumes, because I think we're all little cups of the
Yeah.
great divine. And because we
Yeah.
can only absorb so much, and I know my soul came here since I was a child to learn and absorb as much as I can and to learn. Because even when I was a child, I said to my mom, I remember this specifically, when am I going to learn what I want to learn, what I came here to learn? And she thought I was talking about school. And she goes, oh, maybe next year when you go to school. And all we learned was math and, things like that. I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not what I want to learn. So even as a child, I knew I came in to do this work and to learn and to know. But we can, as a human, only be that little cup in each, and we all learn something different, and we take away something different. We add to the whole, and that's how I like to look at it and understand, because I channel a lot of information and I have stacks of writings. And if you were to give me a test on that, I'd be like, I don't remember. I don't
Mm.
know. Because I can't retain it all. Like
Yeah.
that's why I have it on paper, and putting it in books and stuff. But we're all those little cups. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, one of the when I first looking into the different things of trying to broaden. And I remember reading Silver Birch, and Silver Birch found very interesting. And it's multi-layered. There's so many different, and you can read it at the face level, and but as you read it again and again, and then I moved on, and I say a lot of Red Cloud. I love there's a little bit of an edge there, and I can live with that. And then a lady called Ursula Roberts, Ramadan, has her spirit guide and these different books. And then I sort of moved on. Thought, where am I going to go? And I found the spirit teachings of Reverend Stainton Moses, who was from about 1874, I think they started. Now, he was a Church of England vicar, as we would say, but a reverend over here. And they took it through his automatic writings and the communication that he had. And there was times when the spirit world were like, well, if you're not going to accept this, that's fine. We'll move on. You're not, this prince to be descended onto the earth. You are the possibility. You are a channel. And because he fought everything because of his teachings and understandings through the not the Catholics, but the Church of England, and that Christianity. And one of the things that I found really interesting was actually Red Cloud touched, as did Stainton Moses, and there was the chief communicator was called Imperator. And when you read it, it's like, oh my God, this is so deep, this is so intense, but it just resonates and empowers and challenges and everything all in one go. I just love reading it. And sometimes that's what I do. I get my phone out sometime when I'm having my lunch, and I'll scroll to certain writings by different mediums, by the different communicators, and I'll read them, and I go, oh, my soul's been fed, and I feel energized, and I feel that shift within. But Red Cloud speaks about the Christ aspect and of Jesus, the man, and saying of those different elements within the combination, within that physical body, there was the spirit and energy that was there, but the soul of Jesus, the man, but the influence of the Christ aspect. And it's really interesting when you actually read into him the writings, because it makes sense of it in a way that resonated with me. And that's not denying certain aspects and this, that, and the other, but it's people, they don't investigate enough and try to understand, well, where's that information come from? What can we find out? And so often with the religions, there will always be a central theme within all. They all have the same core, but their cup is a different shape. They all still have the same volume, potential, everything else, but they are all, that for everybody's mouth is different, and a cup for everybody. And for those people who I've just, yeah, I love the way things just pop into your head. I've just been reminded of it. There's a joke, and there's no rude things around here, but the Catholic priest goes into the local pub in Ireland, and he says, "Well, gentlemen," he says, "I thought you might have been at mass this morning." And oh no, 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 we don't believe. We're non-believers. We're in the pub and this, that. Oh, okay. And so he's got these two guys. He says, "So you don't believe in God?" No, 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 no. So he grabbed this bloke by the scruff of the neck, pulled a pistol out, pointed at the pistol. He said, I'm going to prove to you that God, because I'm going to send you to God now. And the bloke went, oh, dear God, please save me. He says, funny, that is how everybody becomes a believer just before. Because we all need something. We all want to believe in something. But the vast majority are prepared to accept what somebody tells them rather than searching for themselves. And as
Mm,
you said, within your journey, you wanted things to learn. I want to learn this reality and how it affects and how it changes this world. And that's the real beauty of it, I
mm,
find. That's been the difference that I believe I've always been a caring person, but the further and further down the line as I've matured as an adult and I've developed as a person, and my mediumship, but also this layer within the grief recovery as well, it's given me a greater personal philosophy and a greater patience for other people. I can still spot stupid, and I don't want to walk hand in hand with them down the road. But I can also wish them well and say, well, the time's not right, and we'll leave it at that. I don't wish you any harm, but this is the part where we part ways.
mm.
Um, and you don't have to be everything to everybody because you can't be, and
Right.
you're setting yourself up for a fool's errand to be that. But
Yeah.
if you have your own understanding, your own experience, you can draw upon that and it can stand up. I'll debate with anybody um, because I know what I've experienced. I know what I've felt, I know what I've seen, and I know the evidence that I've received, but also what I've been able to give, and I've known the experiences that I've been through working as a medium, but also working with people with their grief. It's incredibly empowering, and I always feel whenever we finish a grief café, especially, or have worked with someone with their grief, I always feel immensely privileged that somebody has shared that part of their life with me, and it's just humbling, um, and empowering to know that there are so many incredible people walking this earth, and people don't realize it.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a beautiful place. It's hell on earth and it's heaven on earth. It's all and everything, all in one.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and it's what we make with it and what we do with it, our individual journeys, and it's important that yeah, we use our experience as our experience as, proof,
Mm,
that's our own research and our own journey. We can't accept somebody else's, if we don't have it. And that's why I don't really do grief counseling. I used to do addiction counseling, coaching, things like that. I do still, but like grief, I don't do because I haven't really had that experience in this lifetime. So it's nothing I can add to it, right? It's like I can't use that as my evidence, my understanding, only what I've been through, right? And so I work with what I do, which is I have like a 4 week um ceremonial type situation where
mhm,
it's the letting go process, not the grief, handling the grief part, where we celebrate them, after the passing, and we do like a memorialization, and it's between here and the grief, you might say. So I don't really
mhm.
do the grief part because that's not been my experience in this life, on that level anyway. So I don't really do that. But it's important that we stay in alignment to our own experience, with what we help people with.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out there, that your experience, you mightn't have to well, you won't have recognized because I know actually because what we do is based on education. It's not about actually asking people, how do you feel, or this and that. It's about actually taking them through the different processes and making them aware of the, it's giving you an opportunity to actually release the suppressed grief and losses that we've experienced. Because, for example, like loss of trust, there's a
Mm.
grieving process that takes place through that. So when you say that you haven't experienced, you will have experienced grief in lots of many different ways. If you've not lost somebody significantly that it's impacted you within that loss of that person, you will have experienced other aspects of grief. So we all do, and we all do, like I said, from a small child. You know that when siblings come along, there's a change, and it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's grief. Doesn't always have to be the negative aspect of it, but it's just acknowledging, oh, okay, so that change, it's a change in our normal reality. And the biggest point that we always try, get across is when people talk about time. If you have a puncture, do you pull a chair out off the back seat and you sit down at the side of the road and stare at the tire, thinking if I give it enough time, it'll sort itself out? We don't, do we?
Mm-mm.
What we do, people tend to try and do that with grief because they're frightened of actually, it's a bit like a wild animal. And if we haven't experienced that, what do I do with it? How do I, how do I pick it up? Do I stroke it? Do I just, prod it? Do I feed it? Do I not feed? And then also understanding, how do we feed that grief? How do we, and what's the knock-on effect? And everybody's timeline and how the things change and what they do and how it affects them will be different. But there's one consistent. We don't ever stop grieving. We adjust. And it then becomes part of who we are. So all of those losses, all of those life experiences, all have significant losses or small losses and become like a riverbed. Bits of grain, bits of pebble, bits of boulder, massive rocks, bits of grain, and eventually we're up here. And then what they find is that it explodes when they're trying to keep a lid on it because they can't, because there's too much pressure. And it's like a pressure cooker, plop, and it all goes. But it's our capacity. So what the working with on your grief and working with the different losses that you experience in life, it helps you to put some capacity. And then you can go push things away and go, okay, it's a bit like looking at a problem. Oh, I could go under it. I could go round it. I could go over it. Because I can't go through it. It's a brick wall. So I have to find a way to navigate it, but understand what I'm doing. And when we understand what we're doing, there may be things that we go, okay, well, I don't want to release that emotion at this moment of time. It's very difficult. And but be aware that we are suppressing it and that it will need to come out rather than thinking, oh, I'll push it down and it'll be fine. Yeah, it'll
Mm.
be fine till it's not. And when it's not, you've then got to deal with, it's like a burst pipe that's got 3, 4 cracks and you've got water coming out everywhere, you know? It's like, oh
Yeah.
God, how do I stop this? But that's how it is for some people at different stages. It's different for everybody. But
Yeah.
what, as you're explaining there, it's that for a lot of people, they do struggle to be able to acknowledge and, as you say, letting go of, I got things wrong. I said things I shouldn't have done. I wished I hadn't done. Yeah, but they don't grow wings. They don't all of a sudden become perfect when they get to the spirit world. And I don't know about with yourself, but many, many times, working with people who want to come back and to apologize for their behaviors or what, different things. And so it's as important. There's still grief and loss that takes place in the spirit world because they have to recognize, and eventually we have to face up to what we haven't done, who we were.
Mm.
Um, and and I'm quite comfortable with that. Not meaning that
Mm.
it's going to be an easy, cinema visit when I watch the film of my life. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. That resonates with me. But then I don't tailor my behavior because out of fear. I tailor it because that's who I am, and I express who I am, and that's what the
Yeah.
mediumship has helped to give me as well, with that one deeper understanding of self.
Beautiful. Sounds like you have great offerings for people who are needing or seeking that. Now, are all your services and things online, or do you also do in person?
Yeah, I mean obviously the mediumship. I do that more now in person as well. But most of I do quite enjoy demonstrating online because I haven't got a clue, and it's I've just got to go with what I've got. And so I enjoy that aspect. But the the difficulty, as with everything, is we have so many different facets to a life. There's the grief recovery work that we do, and obviously the mediumship, and taking of services and all of those different things. Plus, um, as I said, the work as a builder and renovator, um, as well, which I enjoy, and I enjoy helping people and solving things for them, and because that we're back to the healing process as well. um Plus all the family and everything else. So yeah, yeah, it's some there are times when it's difficult having a full life, but it's great as well. It far outweighs. I'm not ready for just have a cup of coffee and just lift my feet up and just but even then, you see, when we talk about reading and things like that, there's still so much we can always learn.
Hmm.
This, that's the beauty of this life.
Yeah,
Um, um,
exactly.
and
Where do you
and
see your legacy going with everything that you're doing? How do you see or want that to play out in the future?
well, the next 12 months, I've been promising myself that I'd start to write books. I've got so much stuff that, and that, and different people have mentioned, oh, when are you going to write, when you're writing books, and for both of us and different aspects, that's something that I need to look at, and make a concerted effort. But that means obviously something else has to be put down to one side. But I and would like to work more with the grief recovery for people. Um, that's very much an area that is so needed.
Mm.
Um, but unfortunately, it's I don't know whether it's different in America and in different countries, but like in the UK, there's a lot of things that we're supporting that people have an expectation that it should be for free, and you can't always do it for free because you need to put some milk on the table, and and some cereal in the bowl. Um, so that's always that balance, and I found that that's the biggest problem with mediumship and everything else. It's balancing out between the two. That what's fair and reasonable, because you've got to live, but also help and give where you can. So that'll be the main focuses. Plus, also, fingers crossed, we have a house move, and I have a house to renovate as well. So I have a lot to do. I've stuff to knock down and stuff to rebuild, and work with people. So yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. I think is just more on the grief side, to work with that, and also start collating the different things that I've put towards writing um, the book. And I need to get to it, because it's like When I said about that capacity, it's like it's smacking me under the chin. I need to come out. I need to come out, and I know this. I've lived long enough. I've learned a lot. I've made an awful lot of mistakes. Um, I've got lots of things right and lots of things wrong. And if it can help somebody else to learn from that, then for me, that's great. But I'm also aware there are plenty of people like me as the 3-year-old who burnt his fingers on the hob, because I've got to find out for myself as well. So
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
hopefully travel a little bit more as well, see different places and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Look,
all have that to-do list and legacy we want to do. I have a
oh,
couple, like all my writings, I said I have not in books yet. Some aren't, but at some point. Is there any other topics you would like to cover today, or Spirit have a message for us going into the next year, or anything Spirit would like to share?
well, as I said to you before, for me, I wait to be inspired, and as I am aware of the people who work with me, and the inspiration, for me, and also from them, it's just one of the key factors is always about tolerance and tolerance and also service. And if we, as going forward, not just through this year, but through all our living of our lives, if we can work with a mindset of being of service, not just to others, but also to ourselves, because so often people feel as though I've got to be one or the other. And it's important that within that tolerance that we bring balance. So for this year, it's maybe just thinking for that second or two before we explode. And there's lots of vitriol and anger and just the inflammatory language that just the language that we use and the behaviors of how we are with one another. That's what makes the difference. Because when it hits the fan, the as we refer to ourselves, the human race has incredible capacity to feel throughout the world. We don't need to be there to feel that pain, to feel that anguish. Recently, just a terrible tragedy in Switzerland. Things like, oh my God. And it's trying to educate with our behaviors and recognizing how our behaviors educate other people. As I mentioned, with the grief, with the same with the mum, with the children taking being separate, let's be aware that we are spirit, we are emotion, which can't be expressed intellectually. And so it's understanding that intellectual and that spiritual and that emotional all need to be expressed in different ways. And to acknowledge that, yes, we have to have foundations, but that we are different. And if we can bring tolerance and try to be understanding, and that's one thing I've just to add, that if we just change one word for another when we speak to one another, if somebody does express something about their feelings, their grief, their experience of life and the difficulties or anything, even if we've been through a very similar event, change the word know to understand. Because if somebody says, I know how you're feeling,
Mm.
tends to irritate and push up the hairs. But if I understand what you're feeling and I understand what you're going through, it's a completely, and it's just one word, just changing that one word, but the meaning and I know is shutting people down. I understand is enabling them. to speak and to continue. I understand. Please continue. If you want to express some more, please. And if we can actually open up and listen with our soul and listen to those emotions and not to the intellectual words that are coming out, what we feel, that will help us to make this a better place. It will always be a work in progress. It's the whole point of being here. It's a work in progress. And enjoy the journey. You know, it's a bit like being on an old rickety wooden roller coaster. You're not sure whether you're going to get through all that bend or, you know, whether there's bits going to fall off. And sometimes bits do fall off as we get older. But, you know, that's the experience of it. Be joyful.
Beautiful. And that's all we can do. It's all we can try, you know, and because it'll be over before we know it, the end of the ride.
Yeah, that's it. It's, you know, you've I look back and think, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, that like we said with this house, it's going to coming up for 29 years that we've been here, you know, and I'm 60 in March, so I'm like, God, half of my life and most of my adult life I've lived within this house. I've lived in, you know, my home till I was 21, and then a couple of years in one place and 6 years in another. But all of these things, nothing's a set time. And as long as we have each other, then I've always found we can deal with it by working together.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And before we close, where can people find you for your services and everything that you're doing?
The website is this www.thesoultrust.com. That's where you'll find speaks about when we're holding the grief cafes, and also obviously I'm on just as Mitch Shirley on Facebook, but there is the Soul Trust, and it's an area that we need to work more on. So that may be another thing for this year for me to get so, you know, to put more of the stuff so it's readily available. But as I'm sure you know as well, that, you know, when you've got that many different things going on, it's which plate do I spin?
Exactly. It's a little time here, a little time there, a little time here.
Yeah.
Do you have a YouTube channel, or would you be starting one?
Now I know Kath had one, but it is something that I've been looking at and thinking I can start putting shorts up and different things, different aspects. So yeah, I mean, I need to do more. I want to do more. And that's one of the reasons why when you invited me, I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that, because it's something that it's that thing, you've got to make the first step, the second step, but again, it's spinning plates, juggling balls, you know, and therein lies the enjoyable part of it, that nothing is the same.
Right.
I couldn't stand doing the same thing every day, day after day after day. That wouldn't do for me.
No. I know what you mean by that. Well, there we go. I know, right? So I understand that. I don't like doing the same thing every day either. So
yeah,
beautiful.
It's good to have variety.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mitch, for joining me today and for sharing what you do and for being a part of the podcast.
No, thank you, Laura, for the invite. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about you and me. We're not the one and only. It's going to happen to everybody. Yeah, baby. Say it isn't so, baby. It's the truth, don't you know, baby?